Welcome to the show that takes up no more than 5 minutes of your time, but could help you gain massive real estate knowledge. It's 5 Minutes in Real Estate with best-selling author Shane Willis.
Hey, this is Shane Willis, the Pensacola real estate expert, bringing you today's episode. Actually bringing it later in the evening than I normally do. I normally record these episodes first thing in the morning. But for some of you who have been following the show, you know that I'm out of town on a television shoot for Amazon. I'm playing a character and I'm actually up in Knoxville right now. It's something I like to do. I have a good time doing them. I've been on a couple of shows. They pay me a little bit of money to come up here and have fun. So we all have to have our hobbies. This one's mine. So up here, and the reason I say all that is to say that hang on. Sorry about that. Something got caught in my throat. I had an early morning call time, so I was not able to get up and get everything done before I had to head to set. It was actually kind of a long day. So I got back this evening, was able to grab a little dinner. I even got a chance to get my workout in. Yay. But that's not why you're listening to this. You're listening to this for some real estate advice. And one of the things I want to talk about, I actually brought it up at lunch when I was talking to some of the guys from the set. One of the folks brought up, hey, with some of your online sites now, do you even really need to hire an agent anymore? Of course, I asked him if it's a buyer or a seller. And one of the other crew members said, well, both. One's a buyer, one's a seller. They said, with some of your online sites and everything you can find online, do you even need an agent anymore? And I think both of them were floored in this day and age where a lot of information is online. I give a lot of information away for free. I've got multiple books that I give away, tons of information to and include marketing strategies that I give it all away for free. But what I think floored them, and what I wanted to talk about on this episode, was, do you realize that for a buyer, I have identified 88 different tasks that need to be managed. And for a seller, that becomes 113 tasks. Now, some of those tasks are not even stuff that you think about unless you're in the business, unless you do this day in and day out. But I wanted to talk about a couple of them. There are a lot of pitfalls, a ton of pitfalls that you can hit, to include some legal stuff. Most of the listeners know that I'm Florida licensed. Florida, as opposed to Alabama, which I am Alabama licensed as well. Alabama's a caveat emptor state, meaning buyer beware. So Alabama seller does not have to disclose anything. Whereas a Florida seller, and this is good to know as a buyer as well, a Florida seller, the law says that the seller must disclose any material fact that affects the value of the property. So what does that mean? Well, the states come up with a 5-page questionnaire that they say that a seller should answer all the questions honestly and present that to any potential buyer. Now that's just one pitfall, because if you don't do that as a seller, and then something comes wrong 6 months, a year down the road, and you knew about something and you did not disclose it, that buyer could come back and sue you. I've seen that come back 2 years later. Now, I do not know off the top of my head what the statute of limitations are with that, but I know it's been years that I've seen some stuff happen. So that's just one pitfall. Let me tell you another one. You have got to have it, especially now, especially with the way today's market is. It wasn't as much necessary 4 years ago when we had a glutton of properties. But right now, whether you be a seller or a buyer, whether you be, that's just my English. I told you I was shooting this late tonight. Sorry. Whether you be a seller or a buyer, you need a skilled negotiator. Someone who has actually taken time to study negotiations. And I know that a lot of sellers will try and beat up an agent on commissions when they start negotiating the commissions. Because let's face it, commissions are negotiable. But I always ask this question. It's real simple. If an agent is willing to cut their commission by just you asking, and that's their money, that's what goes in their pocket, that's what feeds their family, that's what puts a roof over their family's head, how much easier are they going to be willing to cut your value when they're negotiating for you? Because as a seller, you're really hiring an agent to negotiate for you. Now, you still control it, but there are some tactics and tricks and tips that a certified negotiating expert, which, believe it or not, there are classes that you can attend strictly on the art and science of negotiation. And that's just one of them. That's just one of the aspects. Now, that falls on both the buyer side, 88 tasks, and the 113 tasks that fall on the seller side. But there's some other stuff that you need, that sound advice, and someone who's going to ask the tougher questions. When I sit down with a buyer or a seller, I tell them, listen, we're probably going to wind up being friends, but I've got to ask you some tough questions to begin with. And it's some stuff that I'm a little brash, but I try not to be. But at the same time, I want you to think. I want you to go through this questionnaire, this process that I'm going to ask you to go through, so that when we get to the other side, if you trust the process and know the process, whether you're a buyer or a seller, you're going to get what you were looking for, the majority of it. Now, I can hear it already. Shane, a lot of this stuff's online. You can find it all, and you're right. Every one of the aspects that I'm talking about, sure. If you know where you're looking, you can absolutely find it. Or you can go get a real estate license. And I will be honest with you, as soon as you get a real estate license, you'll know the law, but you still won't know much about how to negotiate and some of the other things, unless you've done much, much more training. So, as a buyer, I don't see why you don't use a real estate agent. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to pay anything for the real estate agent. So why not get the negotiation if the seller's paying for it? And that is to include using a for sale by owner. I can't tell you how many buyer clients of mine have wound up buying a for sale by owner, and I just contact their for sale by owner and still negotiate. That helps control all the legalities for both sides, and the for sale by owner usually winds up thanking me at the end because we wound up getting a good transaction to happen. So as a buyer, that makes 0 cents for you not to use an agent. As a seller, it makes 0 sense for you not to use an agent. There is too much marketing that can go on. Yes, there are some sites out there you can try stuff on your own, but there are so many pitfalls that can hit you. So I know it's a DIY. What's the word I'm looking for? Mentality that's happening right now in our culture. Culture is probably the word I was looking for. DIY culture right now. But on this one, this is usually one of the biggest investments you'll make. Why not call in a little bit of help on that one? All right, that's all I got for you today. As always, if you have not subscribed, get our tips, tricks, graphs, all this stuff. Make sure you get over to 5minutesinrealestate.com. That's 5minutesinrealestate.com. And if you have not subscribed to the podcast, get over to iTunes or Google Play, whichever one of those players of choice you have. Find the podcast and hit subscribe. I'd love a thumbs up. And finally, if you found any value in this or any other episode, I ask that you share it on social media. Thanks for listening from Knoxville. We'll talk to you later.